followed the Hunger Games films since they were first announced. I remember when they were first announced, like all the people that I knew, my friends' girlfriends, my ex-girlfriends, and just my friend, just like anybody I knew in general, were all really excited for this movie. I didn't know anything about it when the first Hunger Games came out, so I went on and read the books, and I really, really liked them. And even looking back on it now, I can say that the first Hunger Games is a fine adaptation of the book. Catching Fire is a near perfect of the adaptation of the book. But Mockingjay was the one I was actually kind of concerned about because of the fact that Mockingjay was admittedly my least favorite of the book. And when I heard they were splitting into two, I was even more concerned. Usually, I'm not against like a movie splitting a story into two parts. As long as the story is long enough for it to be divided into two parts, that makes sense. If it's something like Deathly Hallows or Infinity War, then I'll totally understand it. I'll be like, you know what? Two parts are perfect because you can tell the story completely. For something like Twilight, I never quite understood why that movie had to be split into two. You could have easily just had the second half of Breaking Dawn Part One be just your first third of the movie, and then the second and final thirds of a Breaking Dawn movie would basically just be almost all of Breaking Dawn Part Two. You didn't really need to split it into two parts, in my opinion. With that being said, Mockingjay, like I said, was a big concern for me. And when I saw Part One in the theaters, I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it because of the fact that they were able to take such a small story like that and somehow make half of it big enough for one movie. And I know the main criticism about Mockingjay Part One was the fact that there was little to no action. But that's why I thought Mockingjay Part 1 was so good. It was because of the fact that there was no action. It was all about politics. It was all about intrigue. It was all about getting the troops lined up for the war. So when Part 2 came along, we would be so emotionally invested into the war. And does Mockingjay Part 2 deliver on that? Is it a pretty good finale? Well, all I can say is, yeah, it's a pretty solid finale to the franchise. First off, the good in this movie. Jennifer Lawrence, Liam Hemsworth, and Josh Hutcherson are excellent in this movie. You can really tell about the fact that they've come a long way since the first Hunger Games, and they, especially Liam Hemsworth and Josh Hutcherson, have grown as actors, and they have become better actors since the first Hunger Games. So ultimately, I was actually pretty, I was actually pretty impressed by their performances in this movie and along with the rest of the cast too, like Jenna Malone, Natalie Dormer, Woody Harrelson, Julianne Moore, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, all did fantastic jobs in this movie, and they really, they really gave. You could really tell they gave it their all because they knew this was going to be their last hurrah as these characters. So to see them just go all out on this one was actually pretty neat to see. And the action of this movie is fantastic. Like there's some stuff in this movie that is literally edge of your seat type of shit. You're just kind of watching it, you're just kind of like, holy fuck, you know what I mean? And I feel like the critics of Mockingjay Part 1 will finally be shut up when they see Part 2 and just be like, all right, finally, we got some action in this movie. And the action is phenomenal. Ultimately, what Mockingjay Part 2 suffers from are pacing issues. When the action kicks on, it kicks on, it's fast paced, and it is exciting. When the slower moments happen, boy, do they slow down. I'm not saying the movie gets boring or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, when these slower moments do happen, it's when you watch them you can really tell why they stretch this book into two parts of a movie. When characters start talking, they really drag things out, and that's not necessarily saying it's boring. You just really feel that things have gotten dragged out so they can make this a part two because they knew if they just did it straight up without any you know without dragging anything out, this movie would have easily been a part of part one. Because the studio really wants to be like Harry Potter and capitalize on it, we get a part two. Not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying the movie slows down as kind of a result of that. Mockingjay Part Two is overall a really solid finale to the Hunger Games franchise. Is it the best of the series? Not at all. It's definitely catching fire. But I will say it is another really good entry into a franchise that honestly didn't really have any bad movies for me. Literally, the first Hunger Games movie I generally liked. Catching Fire I loved. Mockingjay Part 1 I really loved. Well, not as much as I love not as much as I love Catching Fire. Mockingjay Part 2, I thought was a really, really solid way to end the series. Overall, I will give Mockingjay Part 2 a B+. So I gotta ask you guys something. What is your favorite of the Hunger Games franchise? Everything from the first movie, second movie, third movie, and fourth movie. As always, comment down below, subscribe, like, and I'm out.